Shall I take the microphone to you? Anyone want to ask any questions? Yeah.
When you were living in Leeds during 1941, did you experience anything from the Blitz?
No. Leeds had practically no attacks at all, no bombing at all. I think they had one raid or two raids throughout the whole war, and that was it. That was all. We were very lucky there. Anybody else? Yes.
Was there any raids at what you were?
Was there any what?
Any raids?
Raids?
Did they attack the transport?
No. The Nazis examined the passengers and the luggage when they left, but they allowed them to go through because all that was agreed. It would never have been allowed if it had not been agreed. It had to be agreed with the authorities, and this was done.
Did you experience any abuse while you were in
Abuse? No. I was very lucky. As a young boy, I went to a school in what was then the sort of predominantly Jewish area of Leeds, the Chapeltown Road area, and that's where we lived in that area. And there were quite a lot of Jewish children at the school, and we never any abuse, never any problem. No. Yes. Any adventures?
Any other relatives?
Relatives. Well, you mean on the kinder transport? No, what happened was that my parents came with my younger brother, and my father's brothers, one went to Palestine, actually illegally, and it was stopped by the British, and he himself was then interned on the island of Mauritius, and another brother came to England and joined the army in 1939. On my mother's side, unfortunately my mother lost a number of her siblings in the camps. They were murdered by the Nazis, and also my grandparents, my mother's parents, died on a transport to the camps. Yeah. Yes. What year did I come to England? In 1939, January 39. Yes. Yes. I have never been to Auschwitz. Where I was born. No. My younger brother came to England after me. Yeah. He came with my parents. Now, you know, the question which we've asked ourselves, and the question which I'm often asked is, why did my parents not send my younger brother on the kinder transport with me? And we don't know the answer to that. You know, we never asked our parents, and my brother and I have talked about it quite often. And so he has a theory, and I have a different theory. My theory is that there was a limited number of people were allowed on the kinder transport, and there were fewer spaces than demand. So there was an organization which said he will go and he will not go, and maybe they decided only one per family. You know, we don't know, but maybe that was it. That was my theory. My brother's theory is, well, my parents loved me more than they loved you, so that's why they sent you away. but I don't believe that. Anyway, we still get on well together. Yes. To immigrants,
yeah.
To refugees?
Yeah, refugees. So what do you think of it, comparing it back then and now?
what I think of it is really that I think that this government is not doing enough, quite frankly. I was one of a delegation 2 years ago that went to Downing Street with a letter to David Cameron at that time. And that time, if you remember, they were talking about allowing in 3,000 children, mostly Syrian children. Now, that figure seems to have disappeared in the mist somewhere. And I was one of a delegation trying to persuade the government at that time to do more. And really, I think very little has been done, and much more could be done. There must be many, many people in this country who would be prepared to act as foster parents for refugee children who are suffering. You know, it is tragic to see so much suffering going on. Yeah, that's my view. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes. Do I have any children? Well, we had a son. Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago. He had a heart problem, and he died at the age of 52. So that's it. Right? Yes. It's a very good question. I don't know the answer. I mean, I can only assume, there was obviously a fair amount in the mid-1930s. You have to remember that economically many countries were suffering from the Depression, and the economic situation in many countries was not very good. So they were worried about people coming in and having to live off the state, that the state would have to support them. I think that was perhaps the main reason. Mingle in with perhaps a certain amount of deep-seated anti-Semitism in many countries. I believe that may well have been the problem. And I think that's a lesson which we need to learn today, that we need to have a better understanding about xenophobia and racism, and be much more open than people were in those days. And many people still are today, unfortunately. At the back, yes. How did they find me? That's a lovely question. I'll tell you how. My aunt, my father's sister, had come to England 2 months before me, also on a domestic service visa. And she was working in Leeds for a Jewish family as a domestic servant. And, excuse me, it was she actually who found the home for me, and it was she who found the 2 doctors to employ my parents, and who then were able to obtain the visa because they had an employment. So she, in fact, was a link to make sure that my parents and I found each other again afterwards. It's a very good question. Yeah. Okay, well.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you remember your time before you came to England very well?
Well, not very well. I remember my time. I remember bits and pieces. You know, I remember my life at school. I remember I was a very happy child, I had lots of friends, and suddenly, after March 1938, suddenly I had far fewer friends because they didn't want to know me, because I was Jewish. I remember the train journey. I remember, at least I remember bits of it. I remember getting on the train, my parents saying, "Don't worry, we'll see you again soon." Okay, nice to see you.
I think some of them can stay. So
Yeah, it's all right, it's all right. We'll continue. Did you find it interesting?
Yeah, very good.
Good, good. Talk about it among yourselves. Bye. Okay. Sorry, I was, you know, I remember, I don't remember very much about the actual train journey. I remember getting on the train. I remember my parents saying goodbye and encouraging me to be a good boy and so on and so forth. And I remember arriving in the Netherlands, the train being met by ladies giving us goodies and drinks and chocolates and sweets and so on. And then I remember being seasick on the overnight crossing on the ship. And that's about it. Yeah. Next question. Yes.
Were like your the little children being mean to you just because you were Jewish?
Sorry?
Were the little children being mean to you because you were like Jewish?
The children with me on the train, you mean?
No, like your friends, like were they mean
Well,
to
I have
you?
no friends. I mean, I didn't know anybody else on the train.
But were they mean to you, like the people that, like in school, yeah?
In schools in Leeds,
No. In Germany, wherever, Austria.
in Austria. I don't. Tell me.
You know, like when you, oh my God.
Come on.
You know when you're in school, yeah, like were the little children being mean to you because you're Jewish?
Oh, I see. No. Children looked after me.
Oh.
I was very. I mixed very nicely with friends. I had lots of friends, Jewish and non-Jewish friends, and there was no problem really. No. Yes.
Why do you think anti-Semitism is so big in Germany?
That's a very important question. I mean, I think we could spend hours on that subject. Why do I think that anti-Semitism was so big and important in Germany? Anti-Semitism has existed in various countries of Europe for many years, for hundreds of years really. It dates back to even during the Crusades in the 1100s, 1200s, you read about the Crusaders coming from England, from Germany, from France, stopping off and murdering Jews. Now, the main reason that I can imagine is that there was a belief in those days that Jews had murdered Christ, and for that they needed to be punished. And that seemed to be one of the main reasons for anti-Semitism. The other reason for anti-Semitism, there's always a tendency to attack minorities when things are going wrong. Somebody has to be the scapegoat, whether it's Jews, whether it's Roma, whether it's Muslims. There is this tendency throughout the world to attack minorities when things are proving difficult. And this, I think, must be part of it, because in Germany in those days, they were going through a very difficult time economically. After the First World War, they had to pay very large reparations. There was a tremendous amount of unemployment, and the idea that you could blame it on someone like the Jews appealed to the Nazis and to others. And I think that must be one of the reasons. Yes?
If you were to go back, would you do anything different?
Would I do anything different if I were to go back? Well, I mean, I would not do anything different. I would very much like to be on the Kindertransport, because if I were not on the Kindertransport, I would not be here to tell you the story. I would be dead. That's for sure. Because, as I said to you, something like 1.5 million children were murdered by the Nazis during the Holocaust. So I would certainly not want to do anything different, no. Yeah.
Do you know when you went back to the country, when you were older?
Yes.
Did you
Did I meet my parents? My parents were in England. Yeah, so we lived together. From about 1941, end of 41 onwards, we lived together as a family. But I went back many times to Austria subsequently. I worked there for a while. No, it isn't there anymore. It was taken down. I think it's a shopping centre now. Any more at the back? Yes. I was naturalised, my parents were naturalised British in 1948, and my brother and I were part of that naturalisation process because we were both minors, so we were on their certificate of naturalisation. 1948. Okay? Yes?
And when you go on that kinder transport, did you honestly feel like you were going to see your parents again?
The question is, when I came on the kinder transport, did I think that I would ever see my parents again? You know, a child of 8 doesn't really think too deeply about things like that. And for me, it was a mixture of fear, going into the unknown, apprehension, but also a certain amount of excitement. Because, you know, a young boy, you're looking to the future, you're not too worried about what might happen. You don't really understand why you've been sent away. You know it's a problem, you know something's wrong, but you don't go into the whole background. And, you know, I think it's a very straight mixture of feelings that you have as an 8-year-old. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes?
Sorry, this question is all future. If you are in charge of countries out there, so you are not this or that, would you have changed your policy in the future relations, or would you have the same if you are
In charge of which country? If I was in charge of any country, would I change things in view of Kristallnacht? Is that it?
Yeah.
You know, my feeling is that I would like to see countries